Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Somewhere in Between. So, a lot of interesting developments in this episode. One interesting thing is that we got to meet and learn a lot more about Laura's mom, which kind of caught me by surprise, because I was wondering, I was like, oh, Tom referenced her last episode, which should have been an obvious key that we would get to meet her, like, pretty soon. But I kind of was like, oh, maybe that was just kind of a throwaway line that eventually we would never get to meet her, but we end up meeting her this very episode, and we kind of get to learn why Laura has such a problem with her, to the point she didn't even want to visit the facility, even if it meant finding answers, just because it would like going to see her mom would be the excuse to get inside of the building, but she didn't even want to do that. She'd rather go the roundabout way rather than kind of do things the easier way, simply for that reason, avoiding her mom. And it seems like her mom has like a drinking issue, like all throughout her life. Her mom's just been it seems like that's her biggest problem. Her mom is kind of a mess in her eyes. The fact that she drinks a lot. The fact of the matter is that she constantly bounced from guy to guy. She was never probably in any stable relationship subsequently since Laura's dad. We never really went into details about it, but from the conversations, it seemed like he died, because she, talks about the fact is that her mom also spends all of the money that he works so hard to accumulate and everything. That's her biggest problem with her. Because, like, for her, it's like her mom is kind of like, I guess another way of putting it is like very high maintenance. Like she put her own self in that facility for the sake of being waited on hand and foot, because like she likes being the center of attention, and that's kind of why Laura doesn't like her mom. And at the same time, like and it's kind of a funny thing too, to kind of adding like a little bit of a comment, like, to a certain element, like a certain aspect you could add, like you could argue like kind of a comedy element to it to a certain extent, like her interaction with her mom, because her mom kept cutting her off and everything. It's like, oh, you're bringing this man here? What about you and Tom? You're bringing this man that your lover with you, but what about Serena? And asking all these questions like, oh, you're just coming to see your mom. Oh, why are you raising your voice at me? It's just like, oh, I actually thought you actually came here for me, and you just came here to use me for something. And Serena's like, why are you always making grandma cry? And it's just like that basically we see that she's very good at playing people, and I guess that's another reason why Laura doesn't like. I mean, granted, it comes in help later on when she kind of manipulates those guys to give Nico and Laura time to escape, and you see Laura kind of walk away, smile, like, okay, my mom has her upsides, like that side of her can be her very over dramatic self, her melodramatic self can come in handy sometimes too. So that was just kind of a nice insight into understanding more about her. It's not, I was curious, the fact is that Tom had referenced that. I was like, oh, like I thought like there was like something seriously wrong with her mom, like some mental issues. It's like, no, her mom's a little crazy in the like, she has her own issues. I mean, I'm sure there's like a lot of like underlining issues there, but it's not, I think, as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I think as bad as they kind of painted it to be with the way Tom kind of referred to her as. And that's kind of something too that I kind of want to throw out there in this episode, is the fact is I knew at some point Tom was going to throw that at Laura about the whole like sounding crazy and everything, because he uses that to kind of get the captain to kind of be like, hey, I need you to find my wife. She's got my daughter. She's unstable. You're right. I shouldn't have told you to back down when she pointed that gun. It's like, of course you're going to use that now, because obviously he's trying to get the time capsule back, because he figures like the most likely place it is with Serena, so he needs to get it back. So he's getting the police involved in everything, but he's trying to keep it as low profile as possible, because if it was like an ammo alert and everything, it turned into a much bigger thing than he needs it to be, because he's not trying to completely screw up his marriage. Yes, there's their issues now, but I think on some level Tom thinks when it's all said and done, maybe he can pull this all back and get his family back. I don't know, like it's hard to say where Tom really falls in this whole situation, because when it was all said and done, Tom was more focused on being happy about the call and making everything work out. So maybe on some level he thinks like when it's all said and done, he can make it work out, but seems highly unlikely at this point. Even at one point trying to use Grace as a means of trying to track down Nico, but she's like, I'm not falling for that. You want me to help you find Nico? Help me with this whole Danny situation. Till then, shut your mouth. Leave me alone, because she's looking in his eyes, and as someone who's been very desperate, trying to get her son out of jail, she sees the look in his eyes like, oh, you're trying to find him for desperate. It's out of desperation. It's not like, oh, you need to talk to Nico, that this has anything pertinent to do with the whole Danny situation. So she kind of saw through him immediately. I was surprised that he did just go ahead and kind of lie about it. But I guess he knew that she isn't stupid because she's dedicated so much time, the past 10 years to kind of trying to help with the old Danny situation. So she would have been fooled if he tried to like weasel his way around it. So I guess he figured he'd find another route. So in this episode, we also delved a lot deeper into the whole, a little deeper into the whole situation with Nico's cop friend, the one he refers to as Cupcake, about why he's working with it. It's not like a willing situation of like, oh yeah, he's part of this big grand conspiracy. It's like, no, he's a victim in this situation too, because it seems like it's connected to his son. Now, I don't know whether it's a situation where they actually kidnapped his son and is blackmail him in that sense, kind of like a ransom type of situation, like you do what we said or your son's in trouble. But the way they put the statement of like, yeah, we're doing your son a favor, like, he almost like he'd hurt himself. So it might be a situation where he has like an older son who might be caught up in drugs or something, or maybe it's a situation where he has a gambling debt or something and he owes that money to someone, and those people would have come and hurt him if these people had not intervened and protected him. So now a Cupcake owes him. But you do see him kind of conflicted because later on he's not trying to help Nico. He's like, yo, just come back and turn yourself in. Like, dude, I don't want to see you get arrested. He knows it could be a lot worse, especially when you have those two guys chasing Nico and Laura down this episode. But you do see, like, because multiple times he's like, Nico, please don't do this. Because he knows that the deeper Nico gets into this, like, most likely Nico's going to get killed. And he doesn't want Nico killed. Like, Nico is his friend and everything. So he does care. It's not like it's like a whatever, I'm going to sell you out type of situation. It's like he was picking up the other phone. He was about to tell them, but he stopped himself because he wasn't going to sell Nico out, because he knew what kind of people these guys are, and hence why he was trying to get Nico to back down. So I'm very interested to find out like where that goes, because Nico still doesn't know that, his friend is kind of on the inside of this whole situation, just kind of being forced to help and everything. So, but a very big part of this episode was finding out the identities of at least two of the people in the picture. One was, two of the people are brothers. It's Blake and Jason. Blake sadly ended up killing himself, and Jason ended up burning their parents' house down. And so basically he got locked up in a facility, the same facility that Laura's mom was in. Once again, Laura hating the fact is that fate kind of put this whole thing together. Having to deal with the hands that you're dealt with, destiny having its grand plan and everything, and no such thing as coincidences and stuff like that. So, and the whole Jason situation, we ended up learning some very interesting things. Like, Nico ended up overhearing the conversation, and it's like why he wasn't afraid about leaving Jason alone there. It's because it's like they're not gonna hurt Jason, because like one of the guys was like, it'd be a lot easier to do that, but it's like their boss is paying for him to stay there, which begs the question, who is their boss? Because their boss has to be someone that cares about Jason, because they're all about covering stuff up anyway and killing people. So it's like it'd be so much easier just to kill Jason, but the fact is that they're keeping him alive, paying for him to stay at that facility, means it has to be someone that cares about him, and to some level, whether it's like a family member or something, maybe his parents. They might have brought up his parents. I don't remember if they said anything. But I'm thinking that this definitely all has something to do with Susanna's murder, because these are all people who are connected to her. And then there's a whole situation with Jesse, which is starting to bring up the conversation of like, oh, maybe what happened to Jesse wasn't an accident. Maybe that this is all some grand conspiracy cover up, especially when Nico looks at the picture that Jason had drew on his wall, but it was in ink that you couldn't see unless the lights were off. And that scene, the drawing depicted Suzanne's murder, and the other things didn't line up. It's like, no, that person's right-handed, my brother's left-handed. And so it starts making him think like, well, maybe the fact is that Jason was there, which now begs the question that all of them was there during this whole altercation. And so now it brings up multiple questions. One, like, what is the truth behind that situation? And why is Danny lying and saying that he's the one that's doing? Why has he been lying for the past 10 years? Because Laura actually kind of brought it up before. Like, she's like, oh, maybe this has something to do with your brother. Maybe your brother didn't kill Susanna, but all the evidence pointed it to him having killed her. He brought the body out and everything, kept saying over and over again that he did kill her. confronted Danny about it, Danny reluctantly admitted it's like you're not yourself when you drink. You do stuff without realizing it, and it's like, so you're the one that killed her. I saw you. I'm sorry. I did all this to protect you. I just didn't want you to take responsibility. I didn't want you to pay for something that you didn't even realize you did because you didn't even remember. So I didn't want you to remember. So that's why he kept up this lie for so long. At least that's what he's saying. And Nico's so distraught about it because he's like, "Wait, you're telling me I'm the one that killed her?" He's like, "Wait, were the others there?" Like he was asking, like in a sense of like, does that mean like like Nico seems to be kind of thinking like, wait a minute, does that mean I killed all those other people too? Am I having like a psychotic breakdown or something when I drink or something? Like, it's something wrong with him, and I immediately go like, there's no way Nico's a killer. But then again, they're kind of establishing certain things already. They already established that Nico has a very short temper because of the whole beating up that person that got him kicked off the police force in the first place. Then the fact of the matter is we've seen him drink and him just kind of like passing out and just waking up somewhere, just being a heavy drinker. So they're establishing that already just to kind of be a red herring to be like, Nico did it. It's like, there's no way Nico did it. Just who he is, there's no way he would have done it. Because for that to be the case, that would also mean that he has to be somehow connected. Well, I don't know, because that would kind of put him in the crosshairs of this whole situation. I mean, even if that was the case, like, why would Nico? Because if Nico was connected to this, like, he'd be protected. Because all this stuff that is going on, all these people involved, whether it's the person that ended up killing Debray, the one that was threatening Laura and Nico last episode, all that would have meant like maybe they would have been covering for Nico, but it's like, no, they're covering everything else around him. So it's like, arguably you can't be like, it's Nico. For what reason would they have to protect Nico? Like, not unless someone has a vested interest in him, which I don't think that's the case. Like, Nico's just kind of its own thing. He's kind of, he's kind of removed from the equation because he played his part. He basically, his testimony is what kind of helped convict Danny in the first place. So I don't know. It does beg the question, is it something like, because Danny's lied before, so who's to say he's not lying now in order to protect, like, who's to say someone that he cares about wasn't threatened, like Ruby or his mom or Nico's safety. So maybe he's saying it is Nico so that maybe Nico will back down, maybe Nico won't ask him more questions, and, maybe they'll protect Nico or their mom or Ruby, or maybe it's, maybe it's because he actually does think Nico did it because he looked through the window, but he mistook the real killer for Nico. Maybe the real killer looks a little bit like Nico. I mean, arguably the only person I know for sure that kind of looks like Nico is Tom, to a certain extent, like from an outside. I mean, it depends on if like the room was very lit or not. I mean, because from far away in a not lit room, maybe Tom and Nico kind of look alike. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's the conjecture I kind of throw out there. Or maybe it's just someone else entirely that just happens to look like Nico. I don't know. I mean, it could always be the possibility, because it's been 10 years, Nico's just remembering things wrong, of like him coming up and coming towards the body. So it's like, because that would arguably mean that he kind of circled back around, and even in a drunk state doing what he did, would he have really come back over sober like that? I don't know. Like I said, we're just kind of that was kind of thrown at the tail end of the episode. They knew exactly what they were doing, throwing some information like that at the very end of the episode to kind of leave you hanging for like the next episode. Be like, what the hell does that mean? So I think it is a situation of it could go either way. Either Danny is mistaken because he thinks the person really was Nico, or the fact is that he is being threatened, or people he cares about being threatened in particular, so he's lying once again. I mean, that seems to be whoever this group is, their MO, kind of threatening people. So, because ultimately that does seem to be the question. Like, this all seems to stem from Susanna's murder, because everyone that's around her is slowly and systematically being taken care of. Jason's kind of locked up, and it seems like he's in almost like he's in a very odd state that he can't really talk to people. So I guess that's extra reason why they left him alone, because they're like, oh, he's not going to talk to anyone in the state he's in. Plus Blake's whole quote-unquote suicide, Jesse's quote-unquote accident, Susanna's murder. There's so much there. Like, either the others were witnesses to what really went down then, but then that begs the question, like, because Danny was asked, like, were any other people there? And Danny said no. But once again, who's to say he's not lying? And then this whole situation with Susanna, what would that have to do with like all the other murders, as well as the murders, that are going on, like as well as like, because this, like I said, this seems like some higher up thing, because obviously Tom's in talk with whoever's behind all of this, they basically want him to fix this situation before they have to really get involved, because it's like ultimately it does seem like a situation where they will ultimately kill Laura if her and Nico keep digging too deep into this whole thing, which once again goes back to the whole question of like, why did Serena die then? Was she collateral damage because Tom didn't hold up his end of the bargain in the original timeline or something like that? Or was it something else? I don't know. There's so many questions and so many possibilities what this could, really all be about. What this could all be about. So we'll just have to wait till the next episode to really see where all of this kind of takes us going forward into the next episode, as well as everything beyond that. So a little final side note I want to add too, it's kind of interesting that this episode kind of dives deeper into the whole like Serena situation of like, even though she's a little girl, she is picking everything up. She's like, because she's talking to her grandmother about it, like, okay, things are weird, things are adding up, mom's playing some kind of stupid game. She's saying this is all about some report she's doing, but she's never written anything down, and it's just like we're all like, the things that they're doing and everything. So she's slowly piecing it together, like something's not right. But her grandma kind of defends Laura, and it says like, your mom loves you to pieces, essentially, and that no matter what, know that you may not know it now, and at some point you'll learn the truth and you'll realize that everything your mom is doing is for your sake, which is true. And there's also this interesting moment when her mom saw that Laura had a gun, which kind of made her go, I guess in her mind, it's kind of like, maybe it's one of those situations where her mom kind of has like personal issues against herself. And it's like, yeah, she kind of deflects a little bit about her issues and kind of redirects them at Laura in her own weird way. And maybe seeing Laura with the gun made her go like, okay, this is something serious. This isn't like some game that you are doing this. People's lives are at stake. You're trying to do the right thing. I need to give you more credit because you're a lot tougher than I give you credit for, essentially. So I'm curious about that. That was kind of an interesting thing on both sides, both the Serena side as well as the grandmother side, Laura's mom side of things. So at least that's how I'm seeing it. I probably just could be looking at that entirely wrong, but really that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.